"How is Mary looking?" said Sir Walter in the height of his good humour. "The last time I saw her she had a red nose, but I hope that may not happen every day." "Oh no, that must have been quite accidental. In general she has been in very good health and very good looks since Michaelmas. If I thought it would not tempt her to go out in sharp winds and grow coarse, I would send her a new hat and pelisse." It's amazing all the new words you discover when you get into historical novels like this. And a pelisse was one of those that I had to look up because I kind of worked out it's an item of clothing at different times. But what is a pelisse? Well, let me show you. A pelisse is something like this. It's a long jacket that women would wear over their clothing for colder weather. You had really a couple of, 2 or 3 different options for outerwear at this time. Cloaks were definitely still a thing in the early 1800s, but more and more women were starting to wear either a short spencer, which you sort of see in this classic Jennifer Eel look from Pride and Prejudice, or they would wear this longer sort of robe called a pelisse. Many that I've seen are full length, but there are pictures like this one that have kind of a shorter, more asymmetrical hemline. And I thought that I quite like that idea. Maybe a pelisse like this could be something that I could add to my everyday wardrobe. And here's me thinking I would never have anything from the Regency era that would work for my everyday wardrobe. So this is the sort of thing I thought I would finally like to make for my costume for when the weather gets a little bit cooler. Now, if you saw my last episode for the gown, you would have known that I was working with this pattern, and it came with, interestingly, both a spencer and a pelisse pattern, which is really, really handy. I rather like the colour variation on this pelisse. It's got this beautiful sort of military look, which I've noticed in quite a few styles from the era as well. So I think I'm going to work with this pattern again to make it happen. What I've got to do now is work out what fabric I have in my stash, because I don't want to have to buy anything, and that is going to take quite a bit of fabric. So what have I got to make? Well, ideally this, but if I can't do this, then a shorter spencer. Here we go. I found this. It's a gold cotton sateen. It does have a little bit of stretch, so, it's not strictly what they would have had, but that will certainly help it to be comfortable. And I've got enough cotton to be part of the lining for that one. I've only really got enough of this to make the short jacket though, but I think that could actually work, I don't know if you can see that, quite nicely with the stripe of this, because it does have a bit of that gold colour in the stripe. And then I had a look through and I found this lovely dark blue. Now, I think this could be a rayon linen blend, so again, technically not really appropriate given the time, but I think for a costume, this could work. Now, I do have enough of the fabric if I wanted to make the long coat. What I would be struggling with is making sure I've got enough fabric to line it with. I thought it would be fun actually if this had kind of a pattern lining, because you would see the inside of the coat, but I don't have anything appropriate, no pretty patterned cotton or anything like that. Let me quickly jump in here and add to that after I filmed it, because I don't know if you have watched my other videos, but I made this lovely rayon dress 6 months ago, maybe a bit less. But I have material left over from this. I'd bought nearly 6 meters of this stuff, and I only needed about 3 of it for this. So I have material for my lining. It may be rayon, it may be not what they would have used back then, but you know, who cares? And this actually might look really cool with the Pelisse over it in winter weather. So win-win. Okay, back to the other video. So that is my plan if I can manage it. I'm going to make a few changes because, yeah, I never do anything the same. Rather than have this open front like you sometimes see in the Regency era, I would actually quite like it to meet in the middle, even though I won't be buttoning down it. So I'm going to try cut a bit of extra fabric for having it meet in the middle, and I will try for the asymmetrical hemline. So I'm hoping that with that blue linen rayon that I've got, I will have enough to do that. It is going to be tight, but I am prepared to get flexible with it. And look, let's just jump into it, see how it goes, because this needs to be done by the Thursday of book week. So join me. Well, yep, it's a school project, so I am using the staff room table at school to do it, noticing where the flaws in the fabric are and hoping I can get this all cut out. Let's see how it goes. Okay, so here's the first lot of pattern pieces. This is the side back of the skirt, and so I'm going to have it slope up a bit like that, which is why I folded it up like that. So, because my table's not long enough, I'm going to fold this up, move it up, get my next lot of pieces on. Okay, that's the next bit. So this is the front of the skirt of the Pelisse, and as you can see, I am cutting a good extra 10 centimetres here all the way along and just shortening it a bit at the front to give me that curve down. And I think from here it's about 90 centimetres at the centre front, which should be from the waistline to the hem, which should give me about 85 centimetres length, which I think will be about right. So, right, next bit for all of that. Right, so there's the other back skirt piece, other sleeve. Problem is, I've still got collar and bodice back to cut out, and as you can see, I don't have the space. That should be on the fold. That should be on the fold. And the problem is the extra width I've given this space. If I remove that, I should be able to get things there, which means it looks like I am going to have that gap at the front of the skirt. I really would have liked for it to have met at the front of the skirt, but if I can't do it, I can't do it. It's the simple truth. I will play with this just a little bit more and see if there's anything I can do to make this work without getting stuff off green, but it's not looking likely unless I significantly shorten this now, and I don't know if I want to make it that much shorter. So here we go, time to play for a bit. Okay, I think I might have done it. This is the skirt side back that I pinned first with the bodice back, bodice front, and then the bodice overlay there. One cut out of the collar, side back, one sleeve. Now here's the skirt front. I've only managed to get about 8 extra centimetres, not 10. So what I might have to do is a bit of fudging with the pleats at the back to get it to close, but that's got the pleats and it's got the other piece of the sleeve. So the only thing I then don't have is a second collar. I'd been hoping to cut 2 of these out of this fabric so I didn't need to do a contrast, but well, I can't see where else I'm going to manage to cut something like that, no matter how I juggle all of this around. At this stage, it looks like I'm going to have to do some sort of a contrast with that colour, which is not the end of the world. I'm not sure what I'll use, whether I'm going to use the lining fabric on it, which would not be ideal, but it might be my only option unless I can find something else that's going to tie in nicely. Otherwise, it's going to be a fair bit of piecing to get something approximating the colour together. Just found a hole in the fabric. I am so annoyed that I didn't see it. I thought I checked all the fabric for flaws and cut around them. Check your fabric. Check it again. I found one flaw. I did not find them all. The other way around it is if I decide to make it a bit shorter, lose another 10 centimetres, I might be able to get away with it as well. But actually that might be the way I end up going, but I'm going to have to check everything else now. Well, no other flaws, but I do have to think about now the collar. It's this interesting shaped piece. I won't be able to fit it without piecing, but I figured if I do this seam across here, I can get 2 pieces like that. So I'll have a little join sort of on the edge of the collar as well as at the centre back there, and hopefully that will sit okay for the underside of the collar. So I've had a couple of days on the train to start working on this Pelisse, and I'll show you what I'm done and where I'm up to. Okay, so I've gone through and I've done all the darts and the front pieces. I sewn the backs together and the sleeves. My lining is waiting to be marked along the edges so I can do the same. But for now, excuse the creases. Oh, and if you're wondering what my stitching looks like, so everything's back stitched. That's what the back side of the back stitching looks like. That's quite a good fine stitch, so it comes up pretty good, I reckon. So here's today's job. I have to do this weird layer top thing. So just to demonstrate what I'm talking about, that's the piece I was showing you. I'll make the cut there at the spot, turn it over, and then top stitch it on like this. I'm probably going to use a prick stitch, kind of like I did on the dress and the petticoat. Here comes my train. Better get going. So I'm just basting down the edge of that over piece at the top. I never know what to do with the pins while I'm doing it. They usually end up in my top and I end up walking around with pins in them all the time. If I pin them in the skirt, I might see them before I leave the train. So my fingers are almost too cold to work out here. I think we're just creeping up to about 3 degrees this morning. At least the sun's out. It will start to warm up. But I'm just about to sew down let me show you. So here's what I'm about to sew down. This has this sort of extra piece on the top. And for this, I'm going to do, well, look, I call it a prick stitch. I don't know if a prick stitch is its proper name, but, you know, it's kind of how it turns out. It's kind of like a back stitch, but I just take a tiny little stitch at the top. So it just looks like there is the barest prick on the top. I'll show you because I use this on the dart of this top piece as well to hold that dart down. So have a look at this. You see what I mean? But it's just like a little prick. You barely see the stitch itself. It takes just 1 or 2 strands of the fabric, but it gives a really nice neat finish to it, and I think that will work well for going along here. So let's get to it. That should be a good job for today's train ride. You really get into the zen of hand stitching after a while. I've come to enjoy it and look forward to it even. Okay, let's see how well you can see this in the very vague dawn light. This is a rather unusually shaped collar piece that I'm working on just now. It reminds me a bit of a bat. And interestingly, it's not interfaced, it's not stiffened in any way. So I guess it's going to be nice and floppy and everything. But this rather interestingly shaped collar, for the second layer, as you remember, I said I was going to have to join it. So this here is what I've done. So this is going to have a seam on that side, a seam on that side, and I will join it at the centre back on the underside of the collar, which is all very well and good, except, let me flip. See this side? I was trimming the excess fabric from the seam that I sewed, and I have now cut into the actual fabric itself. And yes, it will be where the actual collar is. So now I've got about 2 centimeters there of cut fabric, which I shouldn't have done. Oops. Big oops. Not happy when I realised what I'd done, but it tells me at the end of the day, when I'm in a hurry to get to the train, I should probably not be handling scissors next to my fabric. So, lesson learned yet again. So what I'm going to need to do now, this piece is not going to join to make an off-centre seam at the back. I could maybe try and patch that up, but what I'm thinking I'm going to do is get a piece of fabric that's about rectangular like that. I think I've still got enough left to at least do that, and I will have one more patch in there, and that will sit at the back of the collar. Piecing is period. I keep telling myself that. So, you know, it's exactly what they would have done. It's just annoying as all heck. And yes, you're never too old or experienced to make stupid mistakes. Right, here I go. Train's coming. Well, nothing that a bit of quiet backstitching can't solve. It's amazing the amount of thinking that you get in to problem solve what's going wrong when you're just sitting there quietly sewing away on a train. I worked out that I can pretty much sew anywhere at any time. Here I am. This is school camp. This evening the kids are out doing a laser tag, and I am just sitting back at the gathering area with a few kids who just wanted to sit and read, and I figured while they were sitting and reading, I can sit and sew, and the light was kind of just good enough to. So how does the collar look once it's done? Well, it's a little creased from being in the bag, but as you can see, I've prick stitched it to hold it in place. There's that seams there, that rectangular piece there, the other seam there. That's how the prick stitch looks from the underside. So I've prick stitched all around the edge. And in the end, when the collar's sitting down, you won't see any of that piecing really. So I think that works quite nicely. Now I should give it a good iron before I go to put in the rest of the sleeves. There's one sleeve, time to get the other one done. I found doing a good gathering stitch a lot harder than I expected. I'm so used to machining my gathering. Trying to get a neat, even gather is a lot harder than I thought. I was wondering if I should double up the thread, like do 2 rows like I do on the machine, but it didn't seem to make a difference, so I'm just doing the best I can and hoping that it works. Here I'm sewing the lining down. I didn't actually bother to gather that properly. I'm just sort of bunching it in and picking it up as I stitch. For this, I'm just using a slip stitch. Works fine. Trying to keep it fairly close so that it holds quite nicely. So here we are, another bright, sunny, chilly morning. But yesterday I managed to pretty much set in the sleeve and just about finished stitching the lining in. As you can probably see, I've basted it over the 1.5 centimetres, which also helped to gather it together a bit to make it fit where the gathering is. And then I just slip stitched it to the seam. So I am pretty impressed that that was just the trip to school and back to get a whole sleeve done. And it looks really good. I mean, I wouldn't know. You wouldn't know just from looking at it that it was hand sewn. So I'm really, really impressed with how this is going. So what does this mean for my next step? Once I've finished this bit of the sleeve, I'm up to the skirt of the pelisse. Though I could do the buttonholes if I wanted to, but a bit worried about hand sewing buttonholes. So I'm going to start working on the skirt. For that, I'm just going to use a running back stitch. It won't get a huge amount of wear, and I'll probably still be top stitching or prick stitching down the seams to make them sit nicely like I have at the top of this pelisse. So the skirt being longer is probably going to take a while, but hopefully doing a running back stitch rather than a regular back stitch will help sort of speed the job along. And speed the job it does. If you don't use a running back stitch or haven't done it before, it's just doing, say, 4 running stitches and then doing a back stitch before you do the next lot of running stitches. That back stitch locks it in place a lot better than just doing a plain running stitch. It won't be as strong as a back stitch, but especially for these skirts, it works really well. Okay, here I don't know how well you can see, but the pelisse top is pretty much together. I've just got it on top of the petticoat at the moment because I want to get an idea of proportions. I have finished getting the skirt of the pelisse together, but now I need to sort of work out, well, the hem situation. I'm not doing it like the pattern. I'm going to hem it each layer separately so I can play with that asymmetrical hem. But the other thing I need to work out, so you might remember back when I cut all of this out, I had a pretty unpleasant surprise, because despite the fact that I sort of checked it over and managed to pick up 2 flaws, I missed, I don't know if you can see it there, but I missed these little moth holes. And look, truth is, with the minimum amount of fabric I had, it was always going to be hard to cut around it. But what I am thinking is, if this skirt is long enough, I might actually be able to raise it, say about the 10 centimetres or so there, so that that hole will actually sit in the seam of the waist, and hopefully I will still have enough length. So what I'm going to do now is start pinning, because this is the other thing I need to work out. If you remember, I want to sort of overlap it at the front here so that it meets in the middle, unlike the pattern which sort of only had the skirt start around there. So I've given it a bit of extra fabric. I couldn't make it as wide as I hoped. So what I will do is play with the pleating at the back of this, the skirt of the pelisse, and if I have to make the pleats a little bit smaller so that it closes the way I would like, then so be it. So what I might do now is just start doing some pinning of where I would like it to be if I fold it over where that hole is, and just see if I like that length. If I need the extra length, then I'll repin, but I'm going to have to work out how to fix the hole, whether I darn it, whether I patch it, whether I put a pocket in that spot or something like that. But first, let's see if I can just get rid of that fabric and make it work. Okay. Okay, one thing I can tell you is I have plenty of fabric to join in the middle there, probably because taking the waistline down means the flare opens up the waistline a lot more, so I have plenty more to play with. The other thing I'm happy to tell you, and let me bring my camera around. So here's the back. So at the back, the hem is really quite long, and I'll probably want to be bringing that up somewhat. So I have plenty down there to hem with. At the front, it comes up, and I might still want to take it to sort of about maybe that sort of length. I might try it on some of my everyday dresses as well once I've got this on. So anyway, that's what I'm going to work on now. I am going to baste the sewing line of this so that I can start to pin it to the bodice of the pelisse, and back here with all of this pleat stuff, I'm going to have to just do a bit of playing with it because I've got more fabric than I expected to use. So I'll work out where I'm going to start the pleats from, whether I still make them box pleats or change it, but that I'll work out with it off the dress form. Does that make sense? So now that I know that I've got enough spare fabric, I can get rid of those pesky holes, mark it out with my tailor's chalk and my trusty LLL ruler, mark in those box pleats, and get on with getting the skirt on the pelisse. So it is update time. It is the Friday before book week starts, so it's getting close. But this pelisse is coming together. Let me show you where I'm at. So, see this? This is the skirt of the Pelisse with the pleats that I've put in there. I've done box pleats like they did, but to take up the extra space, I put a fifth one in the centre and then distributed it around the sides. But because this is so heavy, I did backstitch to sew it to the bodice from that side, and now I'm doubling over and doing a second round of backstitch just to make sure it's really nice and firm and secure, simply because this material is quite heavy. There's going to be a lot of strain on this seam here, and with all of that thickness, especially here at the box pleats, I thought a double line of stitching probably wouldn't go astray. So this train trip I will easily get round this second line of back stitching, and then I should be able to take the lining and get that sewn down as well. Have a look at this. I was just turning the Pelisse inside out so I could measure the lining of the hem and get it all pinned. But have a look at this. How perfect is this? I mean, this could pretty much be a two-way outfit. Have a look at it. With the lining finished so nicely and the contrast collar, I would so be prepared to wear it inside out, just for, you know, a different look. Honestly, why have I not looked into the Regency period before now? This jacket is just so doing it for me. I'm going to wish there's more cold weather so that I can wear it this year. So, there we go. Anyway, back to the hem. So, it's book week, and Monday was Mary Poppins. And so this is Mary Poppins on the train sewing buttons to the sleeve. Right, so guess what my next step is? Buttonholes. I've never really done proper buttonholes by hand. I've always machined my buttonholes, so this could be interesting. Of course, I had to use a buttonhole stitch for the stays to do the eyelets. Interesting fact that I didn't share on the video, I actually started doing a blanket stitch, and only by the second eyelet did I realise I was using the wrong stitch. But anyway, we'll get there. That sounds like my train, so I will get moving, keep sewing, and I'll let you know how the buttonholes go. Well, they didn't start off great. This is where I started from. I ended up getting advice from a Facebook group called Slow Stitch. They were really helpful. Mum FaceTimed me too and got me up to something of a decent attempt at a buttonhole. So this was my last attempt. By now I thought, I think I'm as good as I'm going to get. Let's give the finished ones a go. So you start it by doing a running stitch outlining the outer edge of your buttonhole, and this gives you a guide as well to try and keep it kind of together. It also means that when you cut down the middle, which is my next step, what you see here though is a gimp cord I've made to help strengthen the buttonhole. I twisted together my thicker embroidery thread to make a bit of a cord, and that just gets sewn into the buttonhole to strengthen it. So it'll just sit there kind of like that, and the stitching will hold it in place. Now I double checked I got the buttonhole stitch right. The way it works is you loop your thread around and then put the needle under and through, and you want to get the needle as close to 90 degrees through the fabric as possible so that you get a decent stitch behind, and then you pull it upwards to make the knot happen right at the edge of the buttonhole. You certainly need to practice these before you get too far. As you can see, I've found it kind of hard to video it as well. The other thing to really keep an eye on when you're using doubled thread like this is to make sure that you pull both bits of the thread evenly, because as you can see kind of trying to happen there is it will try to muck up your knot for you and get a bit of a loop there. So you really need to keep an eye on your threads as you're doing this. Look, buttonholes are never going to be my strength. I know that now. Here's one I'm sort of halfway through, but guess what I did? Yep, I sewed it to my skirt. Oops. Well, anyway, I eventually got there, as much as I put off doing these buttonholes, and there they are. They're not bad. And so the Pelisse, she is done. If there's one thing I would have done differently, and if I'd had enough fabric, I would have done the lining at the front there out of the main fabric so that it looked nice when it sat open without the lining showing, but it's a minor thing. I love this collar. You can wear it in several different ways and it just flows beautifully. I think using the linen rayon was not a bad choice. Yes, not what it would have been, but I just love the way the linen flows when I do it. And here the outfit is in all her glory. Miss Anne Elliot, this is your outfit. I absolutely love it, and it was a real hit for Book Week. So anyway, thank you for joining me on this whole Book Week journey. I highly recommend, if you want to give the Regency period a go in your sewing, do so. It is absolutely fascinating, and I highly recommend having a pelisse like this. So anyway, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again on Yesterday Today.